when it comes to semis. You make so many here. I always thought that we're told that we can't make anything here and coming low. You have said that's wrong. You have been a big supporter of the CHIPS Act, which a lot of people are critical of right now, thinking that it hasn't done anything. Could you put the state of play in CHIPS Act and what you're doing and how you're able to make things in America when people say you can't?
We are very thankful to President Trump for his focus and drive on bringing domestic semiconductor manufacturing and accelerating manufacturing plants here in the U.S. With the support from Secretary Lutnick and the Commerce Department, we recently announced Micron's investment over the next several years of $200 billion, $150 billion going toward advanced leading-edge memory manufacturing here in the U.S. And $50 billion over the course of next several years.
Good morning. We here.
So Micron is
I'm going to play a little bit of the news press conference by Pete Hegseth about the strikes. There's a lot of questions about the strikes. Did they even accomplish the goal that the strikes were supposed to accomplish?
Of course, and now we bring the leading edge memory production. We have manufacturing happening, construction in Boise, Idaho.
So I'm going to play a little bit of that right now while we get ready for this market to open.
Following the completion of the first leading edge fab,
a shift in burden sharing to European responsibility in NATO that most would have said was impossible at the beginning of his term. But he said NATO needs to pay up. They started in the first term, and here in his second term, we've accelerated that. 32 NATO countries committed to spending 5% of their GDP on defense, on actually investing in the NATO alliance. So I hope with all the ink spilled, all of your outlets find the time to properly recognize this historic change in continental security that other presidents tried to do, other presidents talked about. President Trump accomplished it. It's a huge deal. You see, we're here this morning because in hunting for scandals all the time, in trying to find wedges and spin stories, this press corps and the press corps miss historic moments. You miss historic moments like 5% at NATO, which when you hear, I was in the closed door briefing, I wish there could have been cameras in there. When you heard the prime ministers and presidents of other countries, to a man and to a woman, looking at President Trump and saying, this never could have happened, never would have happened. It seemed impossible 5 years ago, 2 years ago, 8 years ago. But here we are because of your leadership. If you ask them the question, I bet they'd say the same thing. But searching for scandals, you miss historic moments, like recruiting at the Pentagon. Historic levels in the Army, the Air Force, and the Navy. Yeah, maybe there'll be a little mention here or there, but because it was under President Trump's leadership, because Americans are responding to him as commander-in-chief, the press corps doesn't want to write about it. Or bring us to the topic of the moment, the highly successful strikes in Iran. Let me read the bottom line here. President Trump directed the most complex and secretive military operation in history. And it was a resounding success, resulting in a ceasefire agreement and the end of the 12-day war. There's been a lot of discussion about what happened and what didn't happen. Step back for a second. Because of decisive military action, President Trump created the conditions to end the war, decimating, choose your word, obliterating, destroying Iran's nuclear capabilities. I want to read some of the assessments that have been provided, because whether it's fake news, CNN, MSNBC, or the New York Times, there's been fawning coverage of a preliminary assessment. I've had a chance to read it. Every outlet has breathlessly reported on a preliminary assessment from DIA. I'm looking at it right now. Again, it was preliminary, a day and a half after the actual strike, when it admits itself in writing that it requires weeks to accumulate the necessary data to make such an assessment. It's preliminary. It points out that it's not been coordinated with the intelligence community at all. There's low confidence in this particular report. It says in the report there are gaps in the information. It says in the report multiple linchpin assumptions are what this assessment. A linchpin assumption, you know what that is? That means your entire premise is predicated on a linchpin. If you're wrong, everything else is wrong. And yet, and still, this report acknowledges it's likely severe damage. Again, this is preliminary, but leaked because someone had an agenda to try to muddy the waters and make it look like this historic strike wasn't successful. I'm going to get to the chairman in a moment because he's going to lay out the particulars for you based on his professional military experience. But here's what other folks are saying. The DIA that put that report out says this is a preliminary low confidence report and will continue to be refined as additional intelligence becomes available. How about the Israeli Atomic Energy Commission? The devastating U.S. strikes on Fordow destroyed the site's critical infrastructure and rendered the enrichment facility inoperable. Have any of these quotes made their way into the New York Times or the Washington Post, MSNBC, CNN? Any of these quotes? How about this one? This is a new one from the UN, the United Nations. No friend of the United States, or certainly Israel often. Here's the head of the UN Atomic Energy Agency this morning, Rafael Grossi. U.S. and Israeli strikes caused enormous damage to Iran's nuclear sites. Don't take my word for it. How about the IDF's chief of staff? I can say here that the assessment is that we significantly damaged the nuclear program, setting it back by years. I repeat, years. The Iranian foreign minister, the spokesman, our nuclear installations have been badly damaged, that's for sure. I'm sure that's an understatement.
Let me look.
John Radcliffe, the director of the CIA, putting out a statement just last night. CIA can confirm that a body of credible intelligence indicates Iran's nuclear program has been severely damaged by recent targeted strikes. This includes new intelligence from a historically reliable, very different than preliminary assessment with low confidence. He's saying historically reliable and accurate source and method that several key Iranian nuclear facilities were destroyed and would have to be rebuilt over the course of years. CIA continues to collect additional reliably sourced information to keep appropriate decision makers fully informed. How about DNI Tulsi Gabbard yesterday? She writes, and I quote, "New intelligence confirms what POTUS has stated numerous times. Iran's nuclear facilities have been destroyed." Institute for Science and International Security President David Albright, overall, Israel and U.S. attacks have effectively destroyed Iran's centrifuge enrichment program. Time and time again, I can go down the list. Those that understand, those that see, those that do proper assessments recognize that what the United States military did was historic. And again, before I pass it to the chairman, because you, and I mean specifically you, the press, specifically cheer against Trump so hard, it's like in your DNA and in your blood to cheer against Trump, because you want him not to be successful so bad, you have to cheer against the efficacy of these strikes. You have to hope maybe they weren't effective. Maybe the way the Trump administration has represented them isn't true. So let's take half-truths, spun information, leaked information, and then spin it in every way we can to try to cause doubt and manipulate the public mind over whether or not our brave pilots were successful. How many stories have been written about how hard it is to, fly a plane for 36 hours? Has MSNBC done that story? Has Fox? Have we done the story how hard that is? Have we done it 2 or 3 times so that American people understand? How about how difficult it is to shoot a drone from an F-15 or 16 or F-22 or F-35? Or what it's like to man a Patriot battery? Or how hard it is to refuel midair, giving the American people an understanding of how complex and sophisticated this mission really was. There are so many aspects of what our brave men and women did that, because of the hatred of this press corps, are undermined because your people are trying to leak and spin that it wasn't successful. It's irresponsible. And folks in this room are privy to that information because of the proximity here in the Pentagon. It's an important responsibility. And time again, classified information is leaked or peddled for political purposes to try to make the president look bad. And what's really happening is you're undermining the success of incredible B-2 pilots and incredible F-35 pilots and incredible refuelers and incredible air defenders who accomplished their mission, set back a nuclear program in ways that other presidents would have dreamed. How about we celebrate that? How about we talk about how special America is, that only we have these capabilities? I think it's too much to ask, unfortunately, for the fake news. So we're used to that. But we also have an opportunity to stand at the podium and read the truth of what's really happening. And the reality is, you want to call it destroyed, you want to call it defeated, you want to call it obliterated, choose your word. This was an historically successful attack, and we should celebrate it as Americans. And it gives us a chance to have peace, chance to have a deal, and an opportunity to prevent a nuclear Iran, which is something President Trump talked about for 20 years, and no other presidents had the courage to actually do. So with that, I want to hand it over to the Chairman of the Joint Chiefs. They've done technical analysis on this, not just on the strike, but also on our Patriot defenders, on Al Udeid. And Mr. Chairman, I'll hand it over to you.
Good morning. Thank you, Mr. Secretary, and good morning, and all of you. Thank you for being here. As a follow-up to my comments on Sunday's press conference, I wanted to give you a few updates this morning on something I'm honored to do as a chairman, and that's a chance to get to talk about some of our service members and the incredible things that they do on behalf of our nation. And I apologize ahead of time for the length and the detail. Today, I'm going to brief you on a couple things. First, I'm going to talk about our air defenders at Al Udeid in Qatar and their actions on Monday. Then I'm going to walk you through a little bit about the academics that went into the attack against Fordo, the massive ordnance penetrator weapon, and we're going to show a video that highlights the effects that weapon has. Of course, nobody was down inside the target, so we don't have video from the target. First, on Monday. As the President has stated, on Monday morning, we began to receive indications and warnings that Iran intended to attack U.S. bases in the region. That morning, building on the work that CENTCOM Commander Eric Kurilla had done, and on the orders of the President, at Al Udeid Air Base in Qatar and around the region, we assumed a minimum force posture. Most folks had moved off the base to extend the security perimeter out away from what we assessed might be a target zone, except for a very few Army soldiers at Al Udeid. At that point, only 2 Patriot batteries remained on base, roughly 44 American soldiers responsible for defending the entire base, to include CENTCOM's forward headquarters in the Middle East, an entire air base, and all the U.S. forces there. The oldest soldier was a 28-year-old captain. The youngest was a 21-year-old private who'd been in the military for less than 2 years. So let's put ourselves out there for a second. Imagine you're that young first lieutenant, you're 25 or 26 years old, and you've been assigned as the tactical director inside the command to defend this base. Listening next to you is your early warning operator whose job is to notify you of imminent attack. There's 5 people inside a vehicle and 5 people outside of a vehicle around these, a total of, as I said, 44. By the way, you've sat in the Middle East for years, deployed over and over again, extended multiple times, always being prepared, but unsure of when that particular day will come that you must execute your mission and not fail at doing it. In this case, these Patriot crews were deployed from Korea and Japan as part of our U.S. forces there to ensure that we had the most capable missiles in the CENTCOM area of responsibility. As the day continues, you start to hear more and more chatter in the information space about a pending attack. And as the sun starts to set in the west, you get orders from your higher headquarters to make sure that your missile batteries are pointed to the north. There are just a few other teammates. It's hot, you're getting nervous, and you expect an attack. Outside of those Patriot vehicles, your hot crew, which is 1 NCO and 4 additional soldiers, turns a key and relinquishes control of those missiles to that young lieutenant inside the vehicle, and you wait. You know that you're going to have approximately 2 minutes, 120 seconds to either succeed or fail. And then at approximately 12:30 p.m. on Monday, that's 7:30 p.m. in Qatar, as the sun sets in the west, Iran attacks. As the targets were detected, round after round of Patriot missiles are ejected from their canisters by an initial launch charge. Then the main solid rocket motor ignites. You can feel this in your body if you've ever been around a Patriot taking a shot. And round after round goes out and guides against those missiles coming inbound. We believe that this is the largest single Patriot engagement in U.S. military history. And we were joined in this engagement by the Qatari Patriot crews. I'm not going to tell you how many rounds were shot, but it was a bunch because of classified purposes. And we're aware that there's reports of something getting through. What we do know is there was a lot of metal flying around. Between attacking missiles being hit by Patriots, boosters from attacking missiles being hit by Patriots, the Patriots themselves flying around, and the debris from those Patriots hitting the ground, there was a lot of metal flying around. And yet our U.S. air defenders had only seconds to make complex decisions with strategic impact. These awesome humans, along with their Qatari brothers and sisters in arms, stood between a salvo of Iranian missiles and the safety of Al Udeid. They are the unsung heroes of the 21st century United States Army. And I know a lot of you have seen the videos online and the excitement as those Patriots departed their launchers and went up and guided. This really demonstrates the combat capability and capacity of our Army air defenders. Simply stated, they absolutely crushed it. If you'd flip this over, thanks. Let me next move to a walkthrough of the GBU-57 massive ordnance penetrator weapon and share a little bit about the planners who did this and their work on the weapon. First, let me set the stage for you. There's an organization in the U.S. called the Defense Threat Reduction Agency, DTRA.
All right,
DTRA does a lot of things for our nation, but DTRA is the world's leading expert on deeply buried underground targets. In 2009, a Defense Threat Reduction Agency officer was brought into a vault at an undisclosed location and briefed on something going on in Iran. For security purposes, I'm not going to share his name. He was shown some photos and some highly classified intelligence of what looked like a major construction project in the mountains of Iran. He was tasked to study this facility, work with the intelligence community to understand it, and he was soon joined by an additional teammate. For more than 15 years, this officer and his teammate lived and breathed this single target, Fordo, a critical element of Iran's covert nuclear weapons program. He studied the geology. He watched the Iranians dig it out. He watched the construction, the weather, the discard material, the geology, the construction materials, where the materials came from. He looked at the vent shaft, the exhaust shaft, the electrical systems, the environmental control systems, every nook, every crater, every piece of equipment going in and every piece of equipment going out. They literally dreamed about this target at night when they slept. They thought about it driving back and forth to work, and they knew from the very first days what this was for. You do not build a multi-layered underground bunker complex with centrifuges and other equipment in a mountain for any peaceful purpose. They weren't able to discuss this with their family, their wives, their kids, their friends, but they just kept grinding it out. And along the way, they realized we did not have a weapon that could adequately strike and kill this target. So they began a journey to work with industry and other tacticians to develop the GBU-57. They tested it over and over again, tried different options, tried more after that. They accomplished hundreds of test shots and dropped many full-scale weapons against extremely realistic targets for a single purpose: kill this target at the time and place of our nation's choosing. And then, on a day in June of 2025, more than 15 years after they started their life's work, the phone rang and the President of the United States ordered the B-2 force that you've supported to go strike and kill this target. Yesterday, I had the incredible honor and privilege of spending time with these two Defense Threat Reduction Agency officers who've given so much. One of them said, quote, "I can't even get my head around this. My heart is so filled with the pride of being a part of this team. I am so honored to be a part of this." To you both, thank you, and thank you to your families. Operation Midnight Hammer was the culmination of those 15 years of incredible work. The air crews, the tanker crews, the weapons crews that built the weapons, the load crews that loaded it. Before I run through this video today, I want to talk a little bit about weaponeering and what goes into an attack. Weaponeering is the science of evaluating a target. I mentioned all of those factors before that these two DTRA officers had thought about. Ultimately, weaponeering is determining the right weapon and fuse combination to achieve the desired effects and maximum destruction against a target. In the case of Fordo, the DTRA team understood with a high degree of confidence the elements of the target required to kill its functions, and the weapons were designed, planned, and delivered to ensure that they achieve the effects in the mission space. By the way, in the beginning of its development, we had so many PhDs working on the MOP program, doing modeling and simulation, that we were quietly and in a secret way the biggest users of supercomputer hours within the United States of America. So let me talk about the graphic a little bit. And the GBU-57, which all of you I know is a 30,000 pound weapon dropped only by the B-2. It's comprised of steel, explosive, and a fuse, programmed bespokely each weapon to achieve a particular effect inside the target. Each weapon had a unique desired impact angle, arrival, final heading, and a fuse setting. The fuse is effectively what tells the bomb when to function. A longer delay in a fuse, the deeper the weapon will penetrate and drive into the target. So on Fordo, in June of 2008, you can see these three holes. Depicted here is the main exhaust shaft with two additional ventilation shafts on either side. The United States decided to strike these two ventilation shafts, seen here on the main graphic, as the primary point of entry into the mission space. In the days preceding the attack against Fordo, the Iranians attempted to cover the shafts with concrete to try to prevent an attack. I won't share the specific dimensions of the concrete cap, but you should know that we know what the dimensions of those concrete caps were. The planners had to account for this. They accounted for everything. The cap was forcibly removed by the first weapon, and the main shaft was uncovered. Weapons 2, 3, 4, 5 were tasked to enter the main shaft, move down into the complex at greater than 1,000 feet per second, and explode in the mission space. Weapon number 6 was designed on each side, so there were 6 on each side. Weapons number 6 was designed as a flex weapon to allow us to cover if one of the preceding jets or one of the preceding weapons did not work. The video I'm about to show you is a culmination of over 15 years of development and testing. As I said, hundreds of test shots on various models. This is one weapon. So if you take a view of this as 5 additionals, you'll get a sense of what this looks like. Hopefully you can see it and there's not too much reflection. Tom runs our videos out there. We'll run it at full speed so you can see it and then go back through it. Go ahead, Tom.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to the chat. If you're just now joining me, watching
Keep
the
it going for a minute.
breakdown
You'll see inside the
of the
mission space.
attack on those nuclear sites.
Unlike a normal surface bomb, you won't see an impact crater because they're designed to deeply bury and then function. I know there's been a lot of questions about that. All 6 weapons at each vent at Fordo went exactly where they were intended to go. A bomb has 3 effects that causes damage: blast, fragmentation, and overpressure. In this case, the primary kill mechanism in the mission space was a mix of overpressure and blast, ripping through the open tunnels and destroying critical hardware. The majority of the damage we assessed based on our extensive modeling was a blast layer combined with the impulse extending from the shock. Imagine what this looks like 6 times over. A point that I want to make here: the Joint Force does not do BDA. By design, we don't grade our own homework. The intelligence community does. But here's what we know following the attacks and the strikes on Fordo. First, that the weapons were built, tested, and loaded properly. 2, the weapons were released on speed and on parameters. 3, the weapons all guided to their intended targets and to their intended aim points. 4, the weapons functioned as designed, meaning they exploded. We know this through other means, intelligence means that we have, that were visibly, we were visibly able to see them. And we know that the trailing jets saw the first weapons function, and the pilots stated, quote, "This was the brightest explosion that I've ever seen. It literally looked like daylight." Let me now turn to the bomber crews themselves, give you a few details about them. The crews that attacked Fordo were from the active duty Air Force and the Missouri Air National Guard. The crews ranked from captain to colonel, and most were graduates of the Air Force Weapons School headquartered at Nellis Air Force Base in Nevada. I will state for the record that there is no beach volleyball or football at the Air Force Weapons School. They were male and female aviators on this mission. And a crew member told me when I talked to them on video the other day that this felt like the Super Bowl, the thousands of scientists, airmen, and maintainers all coming together. One last story about people. When the crews went to work on Friday, they kissed their loved ones goodbye, not knowing when or if they'd be home. Late on Saturday night, their families became aware of what was happening. And on Sunday, when those jets returned from Whiteman, their families were there. Flags flying and tears flowing. I have chills literally talking about this. The jets rejoined into a formation of 4 airplanes followed by a formation of 3 and came up overhead Whiteman proudly in the traffic pattern, pitching out to land right over the base and landing to the incredible cheers of their families who sacrifice and serve right alongside their family members. Like I said, there were a lot of flags and a lot of tears. One commander told me this is a moment in the lives of our families that they will never forget. That, my friends, is what America's Joint Force does. We think, we develop, we train, we rehearse, we test, we evaluate every single day. And when the call comes to deliver, we do so. I could not be more proud standing up here today of our Joint Force. I'm filled with gratitude that I get to tell their story. And as we stand here right now, our forces remain on a high state of readiness in the region, prepared to defend themselves. And one last thing, our adversaries around the world should know that there are other DTRA team members out there studying targets for the same amount of time, and will continue to do so. Thank you very much. I apologize for the length. I look forward to your questions.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I would just thank you, by the way, for that extensive work, the lay down. I mean, even, do you have that laser pointer? Okay.
Yes, sir.
Thank you, squaring me away as always. I mean, even in just the public reporting, if you see the post-strike shaft of the 3 holes, the vast majority, and fairly so, the vast majority of speculation has been those are the 3 strike points. When in actuality, what you realize is these are the vents, these are the caps. The first munition took the cap off, and the other 5 went down the center hole, which if you're planning the target, you would want it to be the direct one going to the bottom. These are the types of things that go into the planning for a strike that the Pentagon would not expect the press corps, the American people, to initially understand. So laying this information out is helpful. But it's also why we ask for a beat, for a moment, for a day or 2, the opportunity to tell that story. Because as the chairman said, these men and women that did this mission, they just want to do their job. They're not expecting their story to be told. They're not expecting the glory. They are grateful for the flags and the hugs of family. That's why they do the job. But they also know they were a part of something historic. We know how historic it was. The chairman does. I know. Our staffs know. And so that's why we are, and the president of the United States knows. And that's why it's almost personal when we see the way in which leaks are used to try to disparage the outcome or muddy the waters about the impact of what happened without being responsible with information and allowing the professionals to assess and provide that information just like the chairman did. So thank you, Mr. Chairman, for that information.
Sure.
And we welcome a few additional questions. Yes, sir.
General, on Sunday you said final battle damage will take some time. And you also said, I think BDA is still pending, and it would be way too early for me to comment on what may or may not still be there at the nuclear facility. So that was just over 3 days ago. So what has changed? Would you use the term obliterated as well?
Sure, like I said, we don't do BDA. I'll refer that to the intelligence community. And
You're talking with them. I mean, what changed in the past 3 days that make you so,
sir, I think
Sir?
I think I explained what changed. There was a great deal of irresponsible reporting based on leaks, preliminary information in low confidence. Again, when someone leaks something, they do it with an agenda. And when you leak a portion of an intelligence assessment, but just a little portion that makes it seem like maybe the strike wasn't effective, then you start a news cycle, whether it's the Washington Post or Fox News or CNN or MSNBC, you start a news cycle that starts to call into question the ethics. No, that's why. So you bring the chairman here, who's not involved in politics. He didn't do politics. That's my lane to understand and translate and talk about those types of things. So I can use the word obliterated. He could use defeat, destroyed, assess, all of those things. But ultimately, we're here to clarify what these weapons are capable of, which anyone with, two eyes, some ears, and a brain can recognize that kind of firepower with that specificity at that location and others is going to have a devastating effect. So we all recognize there will be days and weeks ahead. That's why yesterday I said, if you want to know what's going on at Fort O, you better go there and get a big shovel, because no one's under there right now. No one's under there able to assess, and everyone's using reflections of what they see. And that's why the Israelis, the Iranians, the IAEA, the UN, to a man and to a woman who recognize the capability of this weapon system are acknowledging how destructive it's been. So that's what's changed.
Just 3 or 4 days later. What changed?
See, this is a point. This is how difficult it is to actually manage. You just watched a video of what this weapon is capable of. That's where we find our confidence, is in the skill of men and women and the capability of the systems they employed, and the recognition so far in the reflections that it was a highly successful mission.
Sure, I think you could, I'd say go out, the IC should be able to help you answer that question. They look at a variety, as the Secretary has alluded to, we look at a variety of things. I don't do that, they do. All different sources of intel, which I'd refer you to them to get clarity on the end state.
So again, I go back to the IC, whether it's Director Radcliffe or ODNI Gabbard. I read the statements at the beginning. They're the ones aggregating the intelligence, and they're saying nuclear facilities were destroyed and would have to be rebuilt over a number of years. Facilities were destroyed. What do we got right here?
Sir, you cited a body of credible intelligence to suggest the damage at Fort O and other places. What is that referring to, and when can we see it?
I was reading from the CIA director's statement, which came out last night. CIA, again, they do the BDA, they do the assessment. CIA can confirm that a body of credible intelligence indicates, it also goes on to say, new intelligence from historically reliable and accurate sources and methods. Now, you can imagine the CIA director is going to be very careful about how he articulates things of that sensitivity. Classified, secret, top secret, compartmentalized. He's going to know things that you're not going to know, that the press isn't going to know, and he's reflecting that the sources he's seeing are highly credible. They've given credible intelligence. They or those processes have given credible intelligence in the past, and that's what he's basing it on.
You think we need to see that?
Do you have a top secret clearance, sir?
Eventually,
Okay.
the American public wants to see it.
Yes. Yeah, you.
I wanted to ask briefly just.
No, not you. Checkered shirt.
Oh, so Mike Glenn with the Washington Times.
Yes, sir.
Thanks, sir. Anybody who's ever read a Battalion S2 report after a fight knows that it's usually, the initial report is usually wrong, sometimes grossly so. Has what happened in this incident caused you all to sort of rethink the intelligence process or the dissemination, or do you think it's just a matter, I mean, if the process itself doesn't require any more adjustment?
Well, I can tell you what the chairman told me in the Situation Room and reminded us all, which is alongside what you just said, sir, is that the first reports are almost always wrong. They're almost always incomplete, right? Anything, whether it's a squad level operation or a strategic level operation, the initial reflections you get are coming at you at a high rate of speed from a lot of different sources. So your job is to step back and assess them. And that's why we're urging caution about premising entire stories on biased leaks to biased publications trying to make something look bad. How about we take a beat, recognize first the success of our warriors, hold them up, tell their stories, celebrate that, wave an American flag, be proud of what we accomplished. And in the meantime, I can assure you, the chairman and his staff, the intelligence community, our staff and others are doing all the assessments necessary to make sure that mission was indeed successful. Yes, right there.
Sir, thank you, Mr. Secretary. Iran has recognized that their nuclear program was indeed severely damaged, but they also said that the U.S. strikes only strengthened their ability and their determination to complete their nuclear program. How do you respond to that, sir? Is that a provocation from Iran?
Well, I would say Iran's going to have to say a lot of things right now in order to bolster their image, especially internally. You know, in the media, there's a lot of things they'll say for domestic consumption. But we're watching very closely what they do. Again, that's the intel community. Our job as the chairman, the chairman laid it out so beautifully. Our job is to be prepared. And how proud are you? How proud am I? I didn't know the full story of those men and women 15 years ago who've been pointing at that target. That makes me proud to be an American. That's an awesome story. I hope we can tell more aspects of that in an unclassified way in the future. That's a great thing to know. Our job is to be prepared when the commander-in-chief calls based on those assessments. So, of course, our IC, the Intelligence Committee, will keep watching what Iran does and pay attention to that. But the president has created the contours, the opportunity for a deal, for peace, in something that the world said was intractable, that wasn't possible. And we got that peace, that ceasefire, that option, because of strength, because of his willingness to use American military might that no one else on the planet can do with the kind of planners and operators that the chairman just laid out. Yes, sir. Right there. Yep.
Yes, sir. Just a quick question. There's public imagery available saying that highly enriched uranium was moved out of Fordo before the strikes. Is that accurate? Have you seen that? And Mr. Chairman, a question for you. Have you been pressured to change your assessment or give a more rosy intelligence assessment to us by any political factors, whether it's the president or the secretary? And if you were, would you do that?
Yeah, well, that one's easy. No. No, I have not, and no, I would not. My job as the chairman is to offer a range of options to the president and the National Command Authority to deliver the risks associated with each of those, and then take the orders of the National Command Authority and go execute them. I've never been pressured by the president or the secretary to do anything other than tell them exactly what I'm thinking, and that's exactly what I've done.
And the highly enriched uranium?
There's nothing that I've seen that suggests that we didn't hit exactly what we wanted to hit in those locations.
That's not the question, though. It's about highly enriched uranium. Do you have certainty that all the highly enriched uranium was inside the Fordo mountain, or some of it, because there were satellite photos that showed more than a dozen trucks there 2 days in advance. Are you certain none of that highly enriched uranium was moved?
Of course, we're watching every single aspect, but Jennifer, you've been about the worst, the one who misrepresents the most intentionally what the president says. I'm familiar.
I was about the ventilation shafts on Saturday night, and in fact, I was the first to describe the B-2 bombers, the refueling, the entire mission with great accuracy. So I take issue with that.
I appreciate you acknowledging that this was the first the most successful mission based on operational security that this department has done since you've been here, and I appreciate that. So we're looking at all aspects of intelligence and making sure we have a sense of what was where.
Why not acknowledge the female pilots that also participated in this mission? The early messages that you sent out only congratulated the boys.
So when I say something like our boys and bombers, see, this is the kind of thing the press does, right? Of course, the chairman mentioned a female bomber pilot. That's fantastic. She's fantastic. She's a hero. I want more female bomber pilots. I hope the men and women of our country sign up to do such brave and audacious things. But when you spin it as, because I say our boys and bombers as a common phrase, I'll keep saying things like that, whether they're men or women. Very proud of that female pilot, just like I'm very proud of those male pilots. And I don't care if it's a male or a female in that cockpit, and the American people don't care. But it's the obsession with race and gender in this department that's changed priorities. We don't do that anymore. We don't play your little games. Yes, right there.
You know for certain that the uranium was removed from the facility before the B-2 struck?
So I'm not aware of any intelligence that I've reviewed that says things were not where they were supposed to be, moved or otherwise. Yes.
Kelly Meyer with News Nation, and just off the top, want to say we're grateful for the service of these pilots and everybody that serves. I wanted to ask you, the CIA statement said, when possible, they will provide updates and information to the public for transparency, and I believe that's what we're looking for here. Do you commit to share the Defense Intelligence Agency report when it is ready, so the American people can understand more about the intelligence assessment?
Well, actually, the report that was discussed, this preliminary report, was what's called a restrike report. So it comes to us to give us an assessment whether a target would need to be restruck, right? That's the reason why. So it's based on internal feedback loop that we're supposed to have access to. Unfortunately, someone took advantage of that. But whatever is supposed to be made public will be, but whatever has to stay sensitive.
Sir, can I just jump in? You know, one of the things that I'm trying to do through this journey that we're on together, of course, transparency, but also the requirement to really protect these capabilities. I guess the time's up. So there's a balance in there, right? We do need to preserve options should the nation and the joint force be tasked to go do something again. So I'm confident we'll find the middle ground, but there are some things that if asked, I'd want to not release related to.
So we're going to leave it right there. I want to thank the heroism of our men and women in the military. What they accomplished is truly historic. Setting back the Iranian nuclear program untold number of years. It was a devastating attack. We appreciate you covering it. Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Thank you.
Talk a little bit more about your role, sir.
Appreciate y'all for joining me. Hit the like button if you're tapping in. On this next video, we're going to watch the supreme leader of Iran, what he says in response. But what we got to understand, nobody wants to seem the lesser, person. Nobody wants to seem weak. Nobody wants to seem like they're getting pushed over. Everybody wants to show strength. We got to keep that in mind. Everybody wants to show strength. But you got to really pay attention to the outside on what's really going on. But everybody wants to show strength. So let's listen to this.
Have been dealt these blows, but yet this is what had happened. We thank God Almighty for assisting our armed forces enabled them to penetrate the multi-layers of defense set up by the enemies. All the military and non-military positions came under our attack. All these positions within the Zionist entity came under attack. The Zionist entity's aggression was met by lethal and fatal attacks, and we succeeded in destroying the enemy's capabilities. And this is a message that the Zionist entity must come to know.
See, what we got to understand is that everyone is going to claim victory. Nobody wants to look weak. Everybody want to look like they strong. Why? Because they got people in their country that are paying attention. The world is paying attention. Nobody wants to seem like they didn't got defeated. Everybody's going to claim that they're winners. And guess what? They have been talking about this on the back end, on what everyone is going to say. But you got to really pay attention to what's really going on in the real world. You got to look outside of the box. Let's continue.
Aggression against the Islamic Republic of Iran will have a dear cost, a big and high price. This is what happened. Praise and pride to the Iranian armed forces, the Iranian people. Simply, the armed forces are part and parcel of the Iranian people. It is the Iranian people that provided, raised, and fostered those armed forces personnel. Today, we have a robust, mighty armed forces. A second message of congratulations on the victory of our beloved Iran against the United States of America. The United States immediately intervened and got involved in the war simply for the reason that they have a firm conviction if they hadn't, the Zionist entity would be annihilated. That's why the United States harried in rescue and support of the Zionist entity. Yet they did not win any victory. They attacked our nuclear facilities. And this matter cannot go unpunished within the international venues. However, they failed to undermine these nuclear facilities. The United States President amplified their military operations, yet it later proved that they have been excessively exaggerating. It is known to all that the outward position of the Americans is failure, as they failed to destroy the Iranian nuclear facilities. That's why they continued with their attempt to magnify and amplify their attacks on our facilities in order to conceal their failure. The Islamic Republic of Iran dealt a heavy blow to the American forces when they targeted and attacked the American military base in Al Udeid in Qatar, causing grave damage to the base. Those who amplified their attacks on our nuclear facilities came out to downplay our attack on their military base. What matters is that the Iranian armed forces have the capability to target and attack any position they desire at any point of time. Similarly, the American military bases will come under our attack if the American forces direct any belligerence against Iran. The third message is, by virtue of the unity, solidarity, and harmony among our people, the entire population, one voice, one hand, standing side by side, rising above their differences. They rose up and stood by the side of the Islamic Republic of Iran and their armed forces. Not only that, they praised and commended the united ranks of our armed forces. The Iranian people have demonstrated their mettle and their unity against the belligerence initiated against the Islamic Republic of Iran. It is a message that our people are one voice, one hand, one block. The key message of my word here is that one of his speeches, the United States President said Iran must completely give up and surrender. Then the issue is not our nuclear endeavors, yet our surrender. However, these words are much bigger than the U.S. President himself. Iran is a deep-rooted empire, deep-rooted in history, with well-established civilization. That's why the word surrender is not within our vocabulary. The Iranian people mocked the words uttered by the U.S. President. Since the victory of the Iranian revolutions, the West, namely the United States, maintained animosity against Iran under many false pretexts. Sometimes they came up with, under the guise of human rights, women's rights. Now they are coming with other pretexts about our civil nuclear endeavors. Their ultimate goal is to see Iran surrendering. Former U.S. President did not publicly utter such words. Simply, these words are not acceptable at the global legal level. No president has the right to demand one sovereign people to surrender. The Iranian cannot and will not surrender. This is a key point in my message. Let the Iranian people know that the United States have deep-rooted animosity with Iran and the Iranian people, and they want us to surrender. This cannot and will not happen. Iran is mighty, established, with deep civilization, deep rooted in history, vast geography, and established culture, manifold bigger than the United States civilization. No one could imagine that Iran or the Iranians could surrender. Preposterous this is. Demanding Iran or the Iranian to surrender would bring about nothing but mockery. Iran and the Iranian people are dignified and will remain standing tall by the grace of God the Almighty. And I pray to God Almighty to bestow blessings and grace upon our beloved homeland and our people. And may God have mercy on the Supreme Leader Al Khamenei. May he rest in peace.
Don't miss out. Get the full picture. Subscribe to Al Jazeera.
Let's see how the stock market going. Let's see what the S&P 500 up to. We're getting to all-time highs on the S&P 500, which is good news. We got NVIDIA moving on up. But yeah, guys, when I think about that, I think that if those strikes didn't work, I think that if those strikes wouldn't have worked, or at least did some type of did something to the facilities, I think that we will still be seeing this war continue. So the ceasefire agreement, in my opinion, sells a lot. Of course, nobody's going to look weak. Nobody's going to look, like they got defeated. Everybody's going to say they winning. Everybody's going to say they won and all this. Iran is going to say we didn't strike this. They didn't strike us. The U.S. going to say we destroyed the whole thing. But the thing is, I believe that if those strikes on that nuclear facility didn't cause some type of significant damage, that this Iranian-Israel thing would have continued. What do y'all think in the comment section? Let me know what y'all think. I think they're destroyed and the Iranians are trying to save face. That's what I think too, Kenneth Edwards. That's what I think. But it's going to be a little bit more time before we can really see what's really going on. It's going to be a little bit more time to assess the damage. But those facilities are deep underground. And those bombs, those things that they penetrated their surface with, they're made to go in the ground and then out once they're inside of the ground. They're meant to go in and then go out. They're not designed to do like a regular explosion, like hit and boom. They're not designed to do that. They are designed to go inside of the ground. They're designed to penetrate the ground and then boom, up underground. So that's why from the satellites, they can't see the real damage. But if you look, if you really pay attention, I think that if those bombs was not a success, we would still be going on. So because they agreed to the ceasefire, in my opinion, that lets me know that there's a lot of damage and it set them back a very long time. How long, we really don't know. 200 feet down is very deep that they dig, right? These two warheads on the first, yeah, it's very, very deep. And those missiles that they let off, those bombers as they call them, they go into the ground. So that's why you see like just a hole. But once they get down there, that's when you get the real action on what's going on. Once that bomber gets down there in the hole, then you see the big explosion. So I think that it worked. But then I also think maybe it didn't annihilate it altogether. But I think it really destroyed it a lot, where it's going to take them a very long time to get all that stuff back up and going. It's called a bunker buster for a reason. Right. It's a bunker buster. It goes down and then boom. You ain't going to really see nothing on the top. All the damage is done up underground. That's why it's called a bunker buster. That's what it's called, a bunker buster. You ain't gonna really see no damage on the outside. You're gonna see all the damage is on the inside. And it's gonna take a minute for them to really figure out what happened down there. But in my opinion, I think it done its job. Otherwise, this would still be going on. That's what I believe. So of course, guys, it's four things that's going on. Iran gonna say they're gonna make it look strong for their people and for the world. Israel gonna make it look strong for their people in the world. US gonna make it look strong for their people in the world. But the thing about America is divided. The other side don't want this side to be successful. That's why it's confusion going on within the country. It's confusion going on. If you notice, in my opinion, the only people that's really saying that it was not a success is the other side of America and the Iranians, which is wild. Why would particularly the red side is trying to put the narrative out there like they missed this target? They're really disrespecting the military. Shout out to the Air Force and them soldiers. The red is really disrespecting the military, bro, by saying those things. Even if it's true, right? Let's say that they missed. The red is not supposed to be saying that to the world. You see how it works? America is at war with itself. The red and the blue are going against each other. Well, my mistake, the blue. I said the red, but I meant the blue. The blue is trying to make it seem like the red missed its target. Because America is divided, bro. And if, let's just make this conclusion that those missiles didn't do their job. The blue side is not supposed to talk down about that in public. That right there is worse. The red and the blue. The blue don't want this president to be successful at all. And that right there is America's downfall. So my thoughts and my opinion is the blue is saying the same thing as the enemy, which is crazy, bro. Yep, my brother served 25 years, and it's an insult. The blue is jealous because red stops wars faster. Right. And that don't look good. That is crazy. Even if, in my opinion, I think it worked. By what I see on the outside, it worked. But the blue is so want this country divided that they'll say anything. Right. We still having a civil war. That's crazy. But I appreciate everybody for joining me. I appreciate everybody's comments. I really, really appreciate y'all. That was really educational. And it's really sad that these military guys have to really try to come and really explain, like, to that extent on what really happened, because the blue is trying to paint a certain narrative to make them look bad. But all it does, it makes us look bad overall. They didn't want it overall. So I appreciate y'all for joining me. Please hit the like button for the algorithm as we end this. I appreciate y'all for watching and tuning in with me. Maybe we'll have more information later. But to the next one, I enjoyed y'all. To the next one, I'm out.